We'll do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Fucking thing sucks.
Hello, hello. Welcome to Open Wide for Some Soccer. My name is Seth Vertelny. Joining me tonight, Pablo Maurer, and via Skype, Thomas Floyd. Guys, why is Thomas not here with us right now?
I'm gonna let you field that one.
Go ahead, Seth.
I'll answer my own question.
Because my rage is too intense for me to answer this question.
Yeah, I messed up a little bit tonight. Pablo picked me up and drove me to Thomas's house. Upon arrival at Thomas's house,
It's about 13 miles away.
Yeah, upon arrival, and only upon arrival,
At the tail end of rush hour.
did I realize that I had left all of the recording equipment here at my house. At which point we turned around and did the entire 13 miles in reverse, and here we are. Luckily, it's been about an hour and a half since we realized the mistake that I made, so I think Pablo's rage has subsided enough for us to do the show.
Negative.
Yeah, I asked that sort of in the form of a question.
Thomas, how are you doing? I'm sort of succumbed to Olympic fever. That's all I got going on.
I may or may not have a USA Switzerland beach volleyball match on.
Turn
in the
that shit
background.
off. We just turned it off. We're trying to be professional here.
It just went to the third set, though.
I know.
It's just getting good, guys.
Yeah.
I think someone just had a concussion and did not get the proper concussion protocol, so I'm a little worried, and I hope Taylor Twellman's not watching.
How does one get a concussion in beach volleyball? Surely that ball is too light to actually give a concussion.
She
It's-
went
it's
for
what a
a
lot of people-
diving save and appeared to kind of hit her head against the sand.
Or like
She
her
looked a little
arm or something.
shaken
I'm
up.
sure it's very possible to get a concussion. Seth is saying the same shit that people said about soccer for years. Seth is like a 1930s dad right now. Jesus, get back out there. You don't get a concussion in beach volleyball.
You don't
Like-
get a concussion in beach volleyball.
Yes, you do.
No, never. It's never happened. I'm just going to say it's never happened without looking into it.
There's some angle I can spin this to make you look sexist, but I won't. It's fine. I'll save it for my Jezebel think piece. Anyways, yeah, if you guys want to call in, obviously 708 LTOWFSS. Talk about anything. DC United, U.S. men's national team, U.S. women's national team as well tonight. DC United. DC
Yeah,
United.
We have got a couple of messages on the old Open Wide for Some Soccer voicemail. I don't know if we want to play those now or maybe later on
Sure.
in the show.
Why not? Let's see. Yeah, we got one from, who is this? Chris in Raleigh, North Carolina. Let's see.
Hi, this is Chris from Raleigh, North Carolina, and
Hey,
I don't know
Chris.
if you guys could give an update on the men's Olympic soccer team. I can't seem to find any coverage on the TV at all. That'd be great. Thank you.
Men's team, what are they doing right now? Let's see.
Fun fact. Both the United States and Mexico will not be participating in the Olympic knockout round.
Yeah,
Honduras is carrying the CONCACAF flag.
Perhaps that loss to Honduras in the CONCACAF qualifying tournament looks a little bit better now, maybe?
probably not.
Colombia advanced too, didn't they?
I don't know.
I believe they did. So maybe this U.S. U23 team just happened to run into two teams that are going to end up meeting in that gold medal match. Bank it.
I think that if that did happen, then Jurgen would add that to his press conference along with the inevitable line about surviving the group of death in 2014.
And now making the Copa America semifinals.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
We're going to be hearing about that one for a long time, I think.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. I think we have another one.
Oh, yeah, follow-up question from Chris here. Talk to me, Chris. Come on.
Hey, this is Chris from Raleigh again.
Hi, Chris.
Hey again.
Question for tonight. Would you rather have Donald Trump's tax returns or would you rather have information on every MLS team's TAM situation?
I don't really give
Thanks.
a shit.
Donald Trump's tax returns, obviously.
The TAM. Oh.
What's, you know, I was about to say it's sad that there's somebody out there who'd rather, but it's Thomas is who it is.
Yes.
You know, Thomas probably gets a. That's fine. Anyways, let's move on.
Should we get into DC United?
Why not? Why not? The joy of my life. Speaking about DC United on this podcast.
Yeah, you know, each and every week, I think we have to give ourselves some credit for coming up with 5 or 6 talking points every week about DC United, even though kind of the same stuff happens over and over again.
Well, Thomas, let's start out with the big news here. Late breaking news that Andrea Mancini has apparently been training with the New York Cosmos. Literally, probably 5 seconds after his father got fired.
Well, we need to give a little background for those who aren't aware. DC United signed earlier in the season Andrea Mancini, who is the son of now former Inter coach Roberto Mancini, and Roberto Mancini's former team Inter is owned by Eric Tohier, who also owns DC United, at least
It's embarrassing.
at least in a nominal sense. So based on that connection and based on the fact that Andrea Mancini can't really play soccer, we surmised that was sort of a favor. So continue.
I'm pretty sure that Andrea Mancini, Roberto Mancini is known as Andrea's father, not the other way around.
We only got a brief glimpse at Mancini in an Open Cup game where, in a span of about 20 minutes, I was able to determine he's possibly the worst player I've ever seen in Major League Soccer. I heard a rumor a while ago that he actually left training early one day because he is literally unable to play with his left foot. And they had a drill where you're supposed to swing across him with your left foot or something like that, and he literally just left. So that's never good, really.
It's too good for that.
Yeah. Shouldn't have to do that.
So upon the news that Roberto Mancini was let go as Inter manager, Andrea was immediately shipped to the Cosmos, I guess.
It's not a done deal, but he's been training with them, and apparently Ben Olsen in training, or after a training session this week, acknowledged that they're looking into either moving him along or loaning him or doing some sort of deal that gets
It's more of a
Mancini
craving.
on the Cosmos.
An endless longing that haunts me in the darkness of the night.
I think he really wants to do it. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. You got to send him off to New York, get him some playing time, speed up that development a little bit, and then in another 2 or 3 years, when he's like 27, he'll be ready to go.
Yeah. Anyways, let's talk about actual DC United stuff, I guess.
Incidentally, not the first favor that has appeared on DC United's roster. Symes Hiralam, Indonesia's finest, also was just sort of stashed on United's roster for about a year as a favor to Eric Tohier, the Indonesian owner.
What do you? Let's go ahead and let's go ahead and speculate on what next year's like. We'll just call them a guest, like a family exchange. Who will next year's foreign exchange player be?
Does Chad Ashton have a son?
Although foreign exchange, I guess, suggests that we would send somebody there eventually.
Well,
know?
now we have the Jason Levy and Swansea connection, right? Maybe like some Swansea U12 player will be on loan with
Jesus
DC
Christ.
United.
Or like Landon Donovan probably has a cousin somewhere. Now that he's involved with the whole Swansea thing, that
Right.
that could use a job. And since Andrea Mancini just left the roster, it could be an opening.
Let's talk about DC United's draw with Philly. A memorable one, I guess. You got a Steve Birnbaum 94th minute equalizer, only necessary because DC blew another early lead. It's actually a little bit to unpack here. Chris Pontius has returned to RFK. Thomas, what are your general thoughts on the result?
I'm going to fixate on the fact that DC United right now has the worst home record in MLS. They have surpassed NYCFC in that category. They're at 500 at home, and DC for years have been so strong at RFK. They've really made it a fortress, particularly over the last couple seasons when they were in contention for the Eastern Conference title.
Well,
And
hold
I'm
on.
not-
I have a quick thing to interject about that. And it's something that our listeners probably you don't see because you don't, I mean, you cover a game, you end up sort of behind the scenes. The tunnel the players walk out of, all right, there's like you know how sort of different places have you walk downstairs, you touch something on your way down. There's like a painting right there the players see as they're walking out onto the field. And for the longest time, I'm going to say it was after 2013. So the beginning of 2014 season, it said, take back RFK, right? Because 2013 obviously was not, they didn't do a good job of making RFK a quote-unquote fortress. And they did great in 2014 at home. In 2015, it said, keep RFK. And they didn't do a great job of that. And this year, it just says tradition. They they gave up on the make home field a fortress narrative. Just not working out for them. Sorry, Thomas. Continue.
But yeah, you're not going to have success in this league if you don't win games at home. And the fact that they have entered this
first
big
place NYCFC air horns.
Yes. They have entered this big homestand where they really needed to make up some points to make a push in the Eastern Conference. First two games have been draws that they will feel like they should have emerged with victories out of. Even this last game, though it required a late equalizer for them to even get that point, after they take the lead at home, you would think that DC United would want to get 3 points out of that game against a Union team that's strong but not unbeatable. That's the type of team that you would expect DC United to win against at home if they want to make a push in the East.
Yeah, some other observations too. It is really sort of a shame that DC couldn't get 2 wins the past 2 weeks because they've managed to play in a manner that they haven't all year, sort of a possession-oriented, have a good deal more of the ball than their opponent. Not just, it's sort of, I guess, diverting a little bit from the emergency defending, knock the ball forward, pray kind of mentality they usually have. So you'd have liked to see them do better, but instead they get the 2 disappointing results.
Yeah, and also a couple of points of the Philadelphia game. It was a fairly even game until the last 20 minutes when DC United really started to turn it on and crank up the pressure on Philadelphia. But Philadelphia's goal, the second goal that the first goal they scored, Barnetta, was kind of a fluky goal. I mean, it was a great free kick by Barnetta, but it was one that Hamid was clearly cheating over to his left, thinking it was going to be a cross. So on balance, you would say that United should have won that game. Certainly should have won the game the week before against Montreal when several players and Ben Olsen said that was the best they played all year. But, obviously at a certain point, these performances are going to have to turn into results, and they still have 3 of their next 4 at home. So we'll see.
Yeah,
and
go ahead.
That second Union goal also was a poor giveaway by Luciano Acosta in his own end. So really, Philadelphia didn't have that much going for them in terms of attacking and creating pressure, even though the flow of the game was pretty even. So that, I think, makes the results sting even more, despite the fact that it on the surface comes across as United grabbing a point late.
Yeah, Philly will have to pay attention to in the upcoming weeks because, with the addition of Ale Bedoya and Charlie Davies, Davies, I don't think he can join the team until after the Olympics. He's competing in the diving competition, I believe. I'm not positive. Anyways, they could really change the dynamic for that team, so we'll have to see what happens with that.
Yeah, it's interesting that you point out how United needs wins and they're not getting them, but when you take a look at the standings in the East, they continue to be boosted by the fact that they are in this mediocre conference right now. They are 2 points outside of a playoff spot, and the team in the 6th and final playoff spot, New England, actually has played 1 more game than United. There is Orlando between them also, but you look at that and you say, even though United has 5 wins all season, even though they have the worst home record in the league, they win a game or 2 and they're right into playoff position. And in the Eastern Conference, if you make the playoffs, you have a good shot to go on a run, because it's not like the West where there really are some strong, dominant teams. I mean, the first place team in the East is still New York City FC. And yeah, you have Toronto and New York behind them and Montreal, and they've all looked good at various points in the season. But United is still in this thing with the shout, and it's mostly because they play in such a subpar conference.
Yeah, I mean, I was just talking to our friend Charlie Bone about this the other day. Looking ahead to DC's next opponent in Portland, you have a team that's sort of been floundering a little bit all year, but seems to be finding their form a little bit. But you just look at them. I mean, they're right above the red line. They're in a similar position to DC, just on the other side of the line. But they are so much better as a soccer team. They have just better players. They play better. They're entertaining to watch. There is, a lot has been made of it in the past couple of years, but there is just such a huge gap in talent between the East and West right now. It's difficult to ignore.
I would like to see a return of the old playoff format where we had the Western Conference champion New York Red Bulls and the Eastern Conference champion Colorado Rapids. MLS used to compensate for this kind of thing, and then they threw that out the window.
Yeah.
Oh God,
Not really. I hated that.
We can't get Thomas started on the playoff format. It's too soon.
Yeah.
I mean, we gotta save some material for our shows in October and November.
One of the goal scorers for DC, Taylor Kemp, that sweet supple left foot of his, actually had a nice run too before the goal.
That was a hell of a
You
goal.
described that left foot as supple?
I mean, yeah, I guess it's more like venomous than supple.
I would say it was sumptuous.
Yeah, whatever. I don't know. I mean, none of us have had it in our mouths, so it's hard to.
Luxurious.
Wait,
moving
guys
on.
have
No, Thomas.
Wait, yeah, I'm
something
gonna
you
go
want
back
to tell us? Anyways, the point being, one of the goals came from a defender, which is DC has been making. Well, both goals came from defenders this past weekend, which is something DC has been kind of making a habit about. Is that, Thomas? You think is that a positive or is that a negative, or is it both?
It's interesting. You're not going to complain if your left back goes on a 70-yard run and fires a scorcher inside the far post, and you're not going to complain if Steve Birnbaum gets his head on a desperation cross late. But it's not great if you're relying on your back line for offensive production because your attacking players aren't getting the job done. And DC United has scored 22 goals in 22 games this year. That is, I believe, the worst mark in MLS, or maybe the second worst mark. Either way, it's not great from an attacking standpoint, and they really need these newcomers, Igbonanike, Mullins, Lloyd Sam, to step up and find some sort of chemistry, particularly with Luciano Acosta or DC, even if they somehow make their way into the playoffs without those players on the roll, they won't go far because you can't just rely on a stingy backline as we've seen the last couple years with United in the postseason.
Am I the only one who gets the feeling that Acosta is just going to be a one-season player that, probably DC will go to Boca and say, or is it River Plate or Boca?
Boca.
Yeah, and say, hey, look, he didn't have the best year. That sort of decreases his value a little bit. We'll give you X number of dollars to buy him outright. I don't think that's going to fly, and I don't think DC is going to punt down the money on him.
Yeah, I'm curious what you guys think of Acosta, because I've seen a lot of different opinions out there of how he's doing. I think that in the final third, we all agree that at least his finishing could be better. I think that he has shown the ability to play that sort of killer final pass once or twice a game that other players on DC United aren't able to do. But, I've seen people suggest that he's been poor, as people suggest that he's the best player on the team. It's probably somewhere in between.
I mean, from having literally followed him with a telephoto camera lens the entire game this past Saturday, it's been a long time since DC has had a player who defenders literally just chase or foul. I mean, nobody dispossesses him without either fouling him or just getting lucky. I do think he holds the ball too long in the box, but that again is just could be his dynamic hasn't developed with the players around him, or that he's just kind of. You could compare him to Giovinco a little bit, except Giovinco can finish from anywhere.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like
I almost feel like at times he's too good or a step ahead of his teammates, and they're just not thinking.
We've been saying this since the first week. I mean, he's just like, it's not that he's a step behind everyone else. It's that everyone else seems to be not playing at his speed.
Right. I think we've seen a number of times where he plays a through ball or he plays a pass, and whoever he's playing it to just wasn't ready for it and couldn't catch up to it. And in a different circumstance, it would have been a perfect through ball, and they would have been in on a breakaway.
I'll also give another point in his favor. He is shockingly good at allowing DC to keep possession just because he wins loose balls. He's so fast to just pounce on any sort of ball that's squirted away from a tackle or is just floating around in midfield. Like he I believe a week or two ago, led all of MLS in duels won and recoveries in that week. And he has just been really important to allowing them to rack up these possessions that we've seen the last few weeks, that they've had more of a flowing attack, that they've had more time on the ball. And that's largely because in this new formation, he plays a little bit deeper and is able to help them win possession. And that's something that I don't think people really talk about as part of his game, but has been really important for them.
Yeah, and aesthetically, I can't remember DC United having a player that has as much of a wow factor since Andy Nahar was on the team.
I mean,
agreed. Yeah,
Kofi Opare for me is.
Yeah. So, we get to the end of the season, let's say, and what's the clause? So he's on loan this year, and they have a clause to make the move permanent. I believe was it $1 or $2 million? And
I can't remember, but I mean, like I said,
I think it was $2. That number was negotiable.
But I just don't think that. I think that DC probably thinks that he's only hurt his sale value, but I don't think that Boca is going to bite on that. And we've seen DC many times cut ties with somebody like Hamdi Salihi, who just didn't really fit in, and that guy scored 11, 12, 13 goals.
Yes, Salihi didn't really play that much though, whereas Acosta has been the focal point of the team's offense for most of the season.
To me, it'll be really interesting to see what he does in these coming months. If he goes on a little bit of a roll from a goals and assists standpoint, then they could easily execute the option or negotiate a transfer fee and want to build the team around him. Because I'll point out that he's a player they got envisioning that they would have him longer than this season. I think that's safe to say. You don't go after a young attacking mid and get the loan with an option to buy thinking, this will probably just be a one-season thing. So I think they have an open mind about that. And if he stays at the current level of production, then I can't see them really justifying paying a transfer fee for him. But if he continues to improve, and I think he has improved as the season's gone on, then maybe we'll see some goals, we'll see some assists, we'll see some tangible production from him. And at that point, he seems like a player who perhaps is worth building a team around as you go forward.
Yeah, so before we move on to general MLS stuff, I think we need to touch on another former DC United player who we sort of forgot about and found him recently.
We're talking about MLS Cup champion Michael Seaton.
Jamaica International at age 17, Michael Seaton.
Now playing his trade in the Israeli second division.
Yes, Hapoel Ramat Gan is the club where you can follow Michael Seaton now.
I don't know if they have a TV deal in the States yet. It might be kind of hard to watch. I'm not sure.
Yes. Michael Seaton signed at age 16, I believe, by DC United. Maybe
he became the first player in MLS history to sign with a team who was younger than the league.
Yes. Maybe a slight vindication for Ben Olsen in this particular situation? Goes to Portland, gets cut. Can't.
Yeah, if you're a young player and you can't crack it with Caleb Porter, I don't know where you can crack it. So who knows? Good luck, Michael Seaton.
But best of luck.
Also, good luck, Michael Seaton's mother, if you're listening. Very active on Twitter.
I mean, I think that's why we mentioned this, right?
Yeah, she's very nice, by the way. It's funny because I shot MLS Cup for the league, and after the game, during the celebration, I was taking some photos of some Portland players, and all of a sudden, this woman's like, in a Jamaican accent, it's like, "Are you MLSist?" And I was like, "Yeah," and she introduced it was his mom. Yeah,
who you've had some.
We all have. Lots of us have.
I know.
I'm not the only one.
You and Thomas have both had some Twitter issues with
She
her.
didn't take well to the portrayal of why her son was let go. Either way, it doesn't matter. I'm saying she's a nice woman, and I enjoyed meeting her. And hello, if you're listening. Moving on. Moving on from the Michael Seaton's mother bulletin point.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about. Let's move on to some general MLS. Let's talk about something I touched on very briefly before, which is Philly making some I'm just going to call them uncharacteristic because they're actually spending some. You would think is a fair amount of change for Alejandro Bedoya, and picking up Charlie Davies from the Revolution. What do you guys think? What do you make of this?
I think it makes them a real contender in the East. They already were in the mix because, as we discussed earlier, the Eastern Conference is so wide open. But I can't remember the last time I saw an MLS team at the deadline actually methodically fill the major holes on their roster so well. If you looked at this Union team, you said, all right, they need a central midfielder to replace Vincent Nogueira, who went back to Europe a couple months ago, and they need a backup striker for CJ Sapong because they have no depth there. He's carrying the whole burden. They have no alternative if they want to mix up their style. And they went out and filled those two holes as well as you could really imagine, signing a guy like Charlie Davies, who seems comfortable being a part-time starter, part-time sub at this point in his career, good locker room guy, seems well-liked by a lot of his new teammates who have been teammates of his in the past as well. And Bedoya is a player who I think will have no real problem stepping right into MLS, unlike some of these midseason acquisitions from Europe, because he knows the U.S., he knows the structure here, he knows the heat and humidity that he'll be playing in August and that kind of thing. So I like the moves. I think they still have some issues in central defense. Perhaps they'll move Maurice Adu back there once he's back from injury. But aside from that, this is a almost as complete a team as you'll see it in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I think it's good that they were proactive and went out and did something, because they have been faltering of late, and you can see that Nogueira, the loss of Nogueira really hurts them. And they were sort of the surprise package in the league in the first half of the season, and now they only have one win in 7 MLS games, and you can kind of start to see the summer months start to take their toll. And Thomas, like you pointed out, they had some clear holes on their roster. The only position they didn't fill was center back, and you wonder if a partnership of Tribbett and Marquez is good enough to carry them into the playoffs and through the playoffs. But at least they were able to fill their biggest need, which was in the center of the field. And hopefully we won't be able to look at that Instagram post that they made like 7 games into the season and look at them as a team that missed out on the playoffs again at the end of the season.
That's one I keep tweeting it because I'm never going to forgive them for it.
Yeah.
The go ahead, doubt us screenshot of the table.
Which at that point they had played like 7 games or something, and it was still May.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, we're starting to doubt you a little bit, maybe a little less because of these pickups, but a couple more poor results, and they will be right outside of the playoff picture.
And I I like Josh Yarrow as a potential solution at center back. He had some good games earlier this year. Obviously was a little raw being a rookie, but if they give him a string of starts going into the playoffs and let him find a rhythm, he, I think, has the potential to be an excellent center back for them. It's just right now they've been very loyal to Tribbett, and he's had, I think, like two or three rough games over the last month now. So it might be time for them to explore different options in central defense. And if they do that, they could probably or potentially find a solution.
Yeah, let's move on to a team we discussed a bit last week, the Seattle Super Sounders. So in 2 games, Nicholas Lodeiro has shown that he is as good, if not better, than advertised, and the perfect fit, exactly the player that Seattle needed. You know,
Seth, I want to put this out there real quick, by the way.
Yeah.
I only recently got why they're called the Sounders. It didn't sort of dawn on me that it was just a play on Puget Sound or whatever.
Oh,
I just didn't know what it meant.
okay.
Yeah, that's how stupid I am. So let's continue talking about them now.
We'll add that to the growing list of evidence.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
So, Seattle Sounders, which are named after Puget Sound.
I mean, they are, right?
Yeah. So wait.
Sorry, go ahead. Oh, look at that. We got a call. Maybe it's somebody calling to correct me. I can see who this is. It's Kevin Fanfoni. Kevin Fanfoni, you're on Open Wide for Some Soccer. How can we help you?
Hi, it's Steve from Falls Church.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
We have caller ID.
Yeah.
This is great friend of the show, Kevin Fanfoni.
Well, long-time listener, first-time caller here. Our question is today, would you say Louis Acosta is the best player for DC United or just the greatest?
Is there a volcano erupting behind you?
Are you playing? Is there like a snare drum that you're playing behind you? What's happening?
We are on the road.
Oh.
Oh, where are you going?
Upstate New York.
Cool.
Going to see the Rochester Rhinos.
Oh.
That's not true. That's. I mean, Tom. I'm sure Thomas's face just lit up, but that's not true.
Thomas could probably tell you actually if there is a game this weekend.
I'm a little
Yeah,
ashamed
they're playing the Buffalo team.
The Buffalo, the Rochester Buffalo rivalry. That gets heated.
Yeah,
Huge.
I'm pretty sure there is not a Buffalo team for them to go up against. Their rival, they consider, I believe, FC Montreal to be their rival.
Really? That's a stretch.
FC Montreal.
That dates back to the early days when the Rhinos and Impact were rivals before Montreal made the jump to MLS.
Yeah, so back to your question. Luciano Acosta, the best or the greatest DC United player? This year, I'd have to say it's the best because he's clearly the most skillful, but maybe he needs to start scoring some goals to be the greatest.
Greatest ever is Long Tan.
Yeah.
That's all I know.
Uh-huh.
Kevin, we appreciate the call. I just want you to drive safely and get to that Rhinos game safe and sound, if you don't mind.
Go Rhinos.
All right, see you later, man. Wow. You know what that call from Kevin Fanfoni, who's a friend of Seth. Whoops. Friend of Seth and I's, got me wanting to do is. Let's see.
It's been a little while.
Per Murdersacker.
To the Rochester Rhinos.
Correct.
This is 6 degrees of Rochester Rhinos.
Yeah.
For the uninitiated.
Okay, so Murdersacker played with Gideon Zalalem on Arsenal.
He's already like 2/3 of the way there.
And Zalalem played on the U.S. Youth National Team with, who would be a good one to use. Let me think here. Zach Steffen, who who plays for the Columbus Crew, where his
I'm
goalkeeper
gonna call a
coach
fact
is.
check on that, by the way.
That's true.
That's true. They played at the U20 World Cup together.
Yeah.
And Zach Steffen's goalkeeper coach at the Columbus Crew is former Rochester Rhino Pat Onstad.
God, he did it in 4.
Jesus fucking Christ.
All right.
Just curb stomping at this point.
Yeah.
Not even using all 6. Hold on.
Jose Mourinho.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
He just
As a-
missed
as a
Matt
player.
Miazga.
He just-
Let's see.
He's coached a lot of teams.
Yes. Jose Mourinho coached.
Are you getting further away from the microphone because you're checking Google or something right now?
No. Let me think. What should I do with this one?
I think he's done for here.
I could probably come up with one, but it's not the most compelling podcast material for me to ponder for like 5 minutes.
So you can't, is what you're saying.
Usually you
I mean-
don't have to ponder.
I will. All right, let's see. I'm just gonna go for one and take it from there. Jose Mourinho coached Cristiano Ronaldo.
I feel like you're getting further away, but
Yeah.
oh no, I know where you can go. I know where you can go with this now.
Okay. Ronaldo played with David Beckham.
Yeah.
David Beckham played.
You've crossed the pond. That's the important one.
Yes. And now we've got Bex. Oh yeah, and David Beckham's assistant coach was actually no. I was gonna say Dave Sarakin, who's a Rochester native but has no connection to the
How do
Rhinos.
you know that he's a Jesus Christ?
That's somehow.
I mean, I appreciate Chris Thomas and I both appreciate you working Dave Sarakin in, but you know.
Let's see who on the Galaxy would be a good one to use.
I'm going to give you 30 seconds.
Yeah, we gotta have some kind of a shot clock here.
Yeah, you got
All right.
30 seconds.
Who on the Galaxy?
20 seconds.
I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this one. Played with AJ De La Garza.
10 seconds.
Played on the U.S. national team with Ricardo Clark.
5.
Who was
4,
teammates with Pat
3.
Onstad.
Oh my god. Oh my god. All right, that's
The
enough.
Pat Onstad one.
That is fucking absurd.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I think we might want to fact check. I'm pretty sure AJ De La Garza and Ricardo Clark did a January camp together in like 2012, but
That was a
That
I
sounds,
may
we'll
have stretched that
give it to you.
that
It's fine.
sounds
It's
right
fine.
to me.
All right, back to the matter. At hand
We
here.
didn't really get into the Sounders much, did we?
No, let's talk about that real quick.
So yeah, Ladero has been excellent. The game against Orlando was pretty impressive, especially
he had
how
one-
impressive Nelson Valdez's misses were.
The
But-
one through ball he had was just like absolute butter. You know.
Yeah, so it's obviously early. He's only played 2 games, and they've won 1 and tied 1. But you know they're 8 points out of a playoff spot. They do have 2 games in hand on Portland, who has the final playoff position right now. You know, does Seattle have a chance to pull a miraculous turnaround here?
I think it's possible because MLS. You only need a winning streak of what in their situation 3-4 games, and they'll be right in the thick of it, and that's entirely possible with the players they have, especially when you factor in not only Ladero but also the added depth of having Flaco Fernandez back in the mix, and I think most importantly having Roman Torres be back healthy from that torn ACL that's kept him out for an entire year. I assume he had some series of setbacks that kept him out longer than the usual 6-7 months. So if you get him in central defense to add a real physical presence, I think that'll shore things up at the back. And we've seen in recent weeks that Ladero, Morris, Dempsey, they can score the goals.
The Seattle Sounders, who in the Eastern Conference would just be 2 points out of a playoff spot right now, by the way, Pretty pathetic.
Thomas, we have an important update to the 6 Degrees of Rochester Rhinos game. David Beckham played with Kofi Opare from Holden Crib on Twitter.
Nicely done.
Thanks for that
Nicely
one.
done.
That can be a future ace to hold up your sleeve.
We don't need to be helping him. Like,
I know.
Also, does Kofi Opare help me that much? Is
I don't
there
think he helps
anyone on
anybody that
DC
much.
United who had a direct connection to the
Pat
Rhinos?
Onstad.
I thought
Was an
I thought
assistant
you
coach there
might be able
forever.
to.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
you go through Kofi to Ben to Pat Onstad.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah.
It's always Pat Onset. Who are the connections? There's a few
Right,
that
because so
you
in
always
6 Degrees
use.
of Kevin Bacon, it's like Jack Nicholson, Tom Cruise. Basically, it's a few good men. Ends
Yeah.
up being the huge hub.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I've used John McCarthy a couple times, Alex Dixon.
Yeah.
I guess I could go to Johnny Steele's another good one. Mauro Biello is one I need to use more. Yeah.
Didn't you use Michael Caine once? Or something?
I believe I did.
You went to John Harkes
what's-
through a fictional character.
You definitely need to use Mauro Biello because there is only 1 degree of separation between Didier Drogba and the Rochester Rhinos.
Oh my
That's
God.
true.
That's too close for comfort.
Well,
All right.
Also, Ethan White played with John McCarthy, so then I have Pirlo, Villa, Lampard, only 2 degrees away from the Rhinos, so that opens up lots of possibilities as well.
All right, well, we're at minute 15 here of 6 Degrees of Rochester Rhinos. Let's move on and talk about the the finally concluded Fabian Castillo saga in Dallas, which just sort of got weirder and weirder every single day. All of us getting the play-by-play from Brian Strauss. Kind of an embarrassment in a weird way.
It's such a shame because that Dallas team is so fun to watch. I guess even still without Castillo, with the players they have, Barrios, particularly Mauro Diaz, is a really just a fascinating player to see on the ball working his magic. But you take Castillo out of the mix, and it takes something away from the appeal of that team. Just watching them as a neutral, it takes something away from their case to win these trophies that they're in the mix for, because they're still they potentially could win all 3 domestic trophies this year, which has never been done. They are the Supporters Shield leaders. They are on the verge of making a U.S. Open Cup final if they can beat the Galaxy's reserves tonight, and they obviously are an MLS Cup contender as well. So it's to see them lose perhaps their most influential player, or I'd probably say their second most influential player at this stage in the season, where they have no chance to replace him. That's pretty disappointing just from a neutral standpoint following the competition of MLS.
Also alive in CONCACAF Champions League. I guess they theoretically could win 4 competitions. But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Right, but that would be going ahead the next spring.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, still, you know what I mean? Yeah, I don't know. It's
I'd
not-
give him the quad for that.
It's not, yeah, exactly. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's crazy how it played out. It seemed like Dallas was definitively closing the door on the deal when they said that they expected Castillo back in training that week, and now I don't really know what to make of that. Were they were just playing hardball? Are they trying to?
There was a lot of. I mean, you had like Fernando Clavijo and you know, there were a lot of rumblings there that Dallas felt a little betrayed. People saying things like money changes people, et cetera, et cetera. You know, so not the most beautiful parting of ways, I guess, for Fabian Castillo and FC Dallas. Although I will say Clavijo, strangely enough, in that same interview, left the door open for him to come back. Just even weirder. But, you know.
It's what made it really strange is it seemed like, you know, Castillo signed a long-term extension pretty recently, and it seemed like he was on board with the idea that, all right, you know, if I ever do leave FC Dallas, I want to make sure they get compensated. I don't want to leave as a free agent for free. I want to leave, get them a transfer fee. We'll work things out. It seemed like they had an understanding in that regard. So for him to just abruptly say, all right, I'm out of here, I'm forcing this deal through, I'm doing it at the worst possible time, was just very jarring and seemed out of character from
First time in a while we've seen a player
apparently understood about him.
First time in a while we've seen a player leave without permission, then post photographs of himself in the airport and signing a contract without telling anybody at FC Dallas what the fuck was going on. So
Reminiscent of Camilo.
yeah, that was
a couple of years ago.
the famous photo of the thumbs up and the physical.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
Yeah.
Trading with the team.
Best of luck, Fabian Castillo.
We will be closely following your exploits at Trabzonspor.
Yeah, in the same way we follow Michael Seaton's exploits at whatever club. What is it again?
Hapoel Ramat Gan.
Okay.
By the way, we were just going to point out how upset we were that Dan Carell hasn't told us about this yet.
Yeah.
We had to find
Dan,
this
if
out
you're
on-
listening, you're like, this is a true miserable failure on your part.
We had to
And
search this out on our own.
I would tell you that I want you to call in and apologize, but I don't think, and Thomas and Seth can speak for themselves, but I don't think any of us ever want you to call this show again. Thomas, do you have any, are you with me on this?
Yeah, I agree.
Let's move on from Fabian Castillo to another of MLS's premier exciting players to watch, one who's still in the league, and one who all of a sudden seems to have found his form, as it was so obvious he was going to, Sebastian Giovinco. Just draining curlers left and right. You know what I think happened? I think you saw Frank Lampard score 7 or 8 goals and was like, yeah, anybody, all right, I better up my game. Like, you know.
Yeah, and you wonder how that snub from the Euro roster for Italy affected him, because he went about 7 games without a goal, and that was by far the longest streak he's ever had. And once he sort of snapped out of that drought, now he's been scoring like 3 goals a game and has gotten Toronto into second place in the East. All of a sudden, they have the best goal differential in the East. All of a sudden, they look like probably the strongest team in the East, favorite.
Getting healthy, tons of home games left.
Right. And, when he's playing at this level, they're so hard to beat. He can make up for so many deficiencies in a team when he just gets the ball and pings it in the top corner from the corner of the box.
I mean, I think in the way that DC United fans have grown accustomed to watching Bill Hamid, who's somebody who, it doesn't matter how bad you play, there's just going to be some nights where he wins the game on his own, basically. Giovinco, exact same thing. I mean, he just literally is capable of these individual moments of brilliance, apparently sometimes 2-3 times a game, to carry Toronto through. And you combine that with Michael Bradley, Josie Altidore, finally some semblance of a decent back line. It's hard to see them not going far.
Altidore has sort of taken up this role, at least in recent games, as the closer. Because of his hamstring injury, he was out for so long.
It's that crucial 4th goal.
Yeah, and Jordan Hamilton has come in his place and done a really good job. And Altidore, you would imagine at some point will regain his starting spot, but it seems to be working right now for Toronto FC to bring him in with about 15 or 20 minutes left, and for him to just sort of impose his physicality on a tiring side, and it seems to be working out for them.
And I really like this team, or I guess I have liked this team all season in terms of what they did in the offseason, adding Clint Irwin, adding Drew Moore. Irwin's obviously been out injured, but he should be back, I believe, fairly soon. And once this team is at full strength with Bradley at 100%, Altidore at 100%, it's, you look at the rest of the Eastern Conference and you go, all right, like, who really is going to beat them? You have NYCFC is terribly inconsistent. Montreal has a ton of talent, but they're back and forth as well. Toronto's been inconsistent too, but they're the team that I look at and I see the most potential to make a run at an MLS Cup in the East.
Here's just another random stat to tell you guys how bad the Eastern Conference is. The New England Revolution have the worst goal differential in all of MLS, minus 11, and they are currently occupying a playoff position in the Eastern Conference.
Dan Dickinson, if you're listening, I think what we'd like to do is move Sad Stats onto just the Eastern Conference as a whole.
Yeah.
If there's any kind of like obscure, the obscure statistics about the Eastern Conference to demonstrate how terrible it is, please feed those along. Anyways. Are we just going to stop now, or?
Do we want to wrap up with a little roundup of some of the more noteworthy deadline day moves? MLS transfer window closes last week.
Why don't we do something which we typically don't do, which is talk about the U.S. women's team, who are actually competing in a major tournament right now.
Oh, right, yeah. Let's do that.
Yeah. Or mostly Thomas, but yeah, let's do it.
I've watched parts of all 3 games, so I feel qualified to at least interject.
I've definitely watched some of the matches. I just am not going to be that guy who pretends that he has this expansive knowledge of the women's program when I don't. Okay. A lot of people do that. Thomas, what are your thoughts? Why don't we start with the Colombia game? You know what? Why don't we start with Hope Solo? Why don't we just start with Hope Solo? Because everybody else seems to be starting with Hope Solo right now.
Zika!
Yeah. Wow, God. Thomas, what do you make of what you saw against Colombia, specifically in the Hope Solo department?
I think it was probably an aberration, and for any listeners who haven't been closely following the tournament, Solo allowed one very poor goal, pretty vintage howler on the opener for Colombia, and then on the late equalizer, really should have done better. So really both goals in the 2-2 draw were questionable. It made no impact whatsoever on the big picture of this tournament. The U.S. won the group all the same. They knew they only needed a draw. They were playing a lot of backups, subbed out Carly Lloyd at halftime. We're just kind of managing things, trying to get through that game injury-free and without burning too much energy. But it's not encouraging when you see your goalkeeper, who has been the subject of so much scrutiny from fans and in turn from media, constantly asking questions about the fans and about how they're all over her back because of her comments about the Zika virus. And if it gets in her head, then maybe that starts to become a problem. If she is thinking, all right, just don't make a mistake, don't give these fans further reason to ridicule me.
Exactly.
Yeah, then mistakes are going to happen, and you have to wonder if that is what occurred yesterday. It's worth noting that in the build-up to the first goal she allowed, she also mishit a clearance out of her box that went straight to Colombia and led to the set piece that they scored off of. And that's a case where, you hear in the background that they're winding up the Zika chant, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if the reason she mishit it is because she had that in the back of her mind and she's overthinking things. That said, we aren't in Hope Solo's head, so maybe this is all just a coincidence. She made a mistake, had a bad game, it happens, and the rest of the tournament she'll be back to vintage Hope Solo that we've all seen on the soccer field for the last decade. But it's a storyline to watch going into the knockout round.
So U.S. plays Colombia in the quarterfinal. Thomas, I wanted to get, or not Colombia, Sweden. They already played Colombia.
Yes.
Yeah. So I wanted to get your thought on the return of Megan Rapinoe. She was brought on this roster, even though she hadn't played since December due to a torn ACL. They gave her the start against Colombia and only played her 30 minutes, which was apparently a pre-planned thing. I'm wondering where you think she fits in with this team in attack, because she looked a little rusty, which is understandable. But do you want to start her in a knockout game when you have a player like Mallory Pugh, who has been, I believe she started one game out of the 3, but she looks dynamic. You also have Press, you have Dunn. You have a lot of attacking pieces outside of Morgan, who's been playing up top. Where do you think Rapinoe fits into that picture?
That's a good question. Rapinoe, I think at this point, if you're in a do-or-die knockout round game, I don't think she's going to get more than maybe 15 minutes, 10 minutes as your second or third sub. Because I think right now you're starting Tobin Heath on one flank, and you're starting either Crystal Dunn or Mallory Pugh on the other flank. And then whoever doesn't start of that duo will be your first sub off the bench. And really, there's no other way you can reasonably look at it. As great a player as Megan Rapinoe is, you can't justify giving her minutes over Dunn or Pugh at this point. Those are two players who have really stepped up over the last few months, have shown that they are rising stars in the U.S. soccer program, and they are in form, healthy, playing sharp. At that point, you're saying, all right, do I bring in Rapinoe or Kristen Press as the second sub? Even then, Kristen Press has been playing very well, scored some goals in the build-up to a tournament, has been playing well in the NWSL as well. So, yeah, Rapinoe, I think in this tournament, she's really just going to be kind of a late cameo roll of the dice in the knockout rounds, unless they really get an opportunity to further build her fitness. Maybe if it's a scenario where they, get a comfortable win against Sweden and can bring her off the bench solely for the purpose of getting her minutes to build her. But if in terms of using her strategically, I think she's pretty far down the depth chart, and she's really just a wild card. I don't think the U.S. will be starting her any games in the knockout round, and I'd be surprised if they leaned on her too heavily off the bench either.
So Friday, U.S. plays Sweden, coached by, of course, former U.S. coach Pia Sundhage. Sweden was not great at the World Cup last year. They also have not been great at the Olympics this year. I have seen it suggested in some quarters this could be a trap game. Thomas, do you think that the U.S. has any danger, particularly coming off that poor performance against Colombia? I mean, are they in any danger of dropping this one?
I think there's always the danger of that. That said, I wouldn't really characterize it as a trap game because I think this U.S. team, they know that Sweden can test them. They know what Pia Sundhage is like as a coach. They know her quality in terms of putting together a game plan. They know her familiarity with the team and how that can help her. And they will remember tying Sweden in the group stage of the World Cup last summer. Sweden was the only team the U.S. played in the entire tournament who they did not defeat. So they know that, on a given day, Sweden is perfectly capable of pulling off the upset. Colombia just getting a draw against the U.S. was a pretty shocking result. The U.S. had played them twice in April and won by a 10-0 margin over the two games. This would not be shocking. That said, the U.S. should win. They're the overwhelming favorites, but it's going to be a tight game, I think. It's going to be a real test for them, and they'll be up for it.
Yeah, last question. We know this team has been playing with a heavy heart due to the loss of Harambe. How much has his spirit infused in this team, and how much do you think they are collectively playing so that we never forget Harambe?
Even for me, it's too emotional to speak about. So I can't really feel that one.
I understand.
I want to shout out to our Twitter follower who said that rumor on the street is that Hilario Grajeda saw Harambe executed and didn't even give a yellow card for it. Anyways, I think we're all a mess here when it comes to Harambe. So I think maybe we call it a night on Harambe.
We gotta end it.
R.I.P. Harambe.
We miss you.
Thomas, any closing thoughts?
I miss you guys.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week.